What if everything you believed about 2012 was a misunderstanding? What if the doomsday headlines, the apocalyptic fears, and the idea of the end of the world were never part of the Mayan message at all? In truth, the Maya never predicted an ending. What they saw was a shift, a turning of the great wheel, a reset in the rhythm of time itself. But you were never meant to understand it that way, because the real message of the Mayan calendar was too powerful, too liberating for the system to allow it through. So it was distorted, buried under Hollywood catastrophes and New Age confusion, turned into just another story of fear. But fear was never the point. You see, the date wasn't random. December 21st, 2012 marked the completion of a cycle that began more than 5,000 years ago. A cycle of 13 back-tunes, massive time periods measured by a civilization that didn't just observe the stars. They listened to them. To the Maya, time was alive. It breathed, it pulsed, it moved in sacred rhythms that echoed through all of nature. Every cycle had a purpose, and every ending was a doorway. What happened in 2012 wasn't the fall of the world. It was the end of one level of consciousness and the invitation to step into another. But that kind of shift isn't loud. It doesn't explode in fire and flood. It whispers. It begins in dreams, in intuition, in the quiet moments where something inside you says everything feels different and I don't know why. But because you were expecting destruction, you missed the transformation. You were watching for chaos and didn't see the recalibration. Because when the world didn't burn, when nothing seemed to happen, you assumed it was all a lie. But the calendar never said there would be fire. It never said there would be doom. It only said this age is complete. And that's exactly what happened. The old energetic blueprint collapsed. The cosmic cycle turned. And a new era, one that demands consciousness, alignment, and truth, began. Quietly, invisibly, but unmistakably. And the reason so many still feel lost today is because they're living in a new world with old instructions, trying to navigate an evolved frequency with outdated beliefs. The map changed, the time shifted, and no one told you, but the Maya tried to. They left us the calendar, they gave us the keys. It's just that you were never taught how to read them, until now. To understand why 2012 was never the end, you first have to understand what the Mayan calendar actually is, and what it was never meant to be. Because what most people imagine when they hear Mayan calendar is a stone disc with a dramatic face carved in the middle, a relic from some lost world predicting disaster. But that image isn't even Mayan, it's Aztec. And even that was never meant to forecast doom. The truth is far more complex and far more beautiful. The Maya didn't just build calendars, they built clocks of consciousness. Instruments for tracking not only the passage of days, but the evolution of energy. For them, time was not just a sequence of moments, it was a living spiral of transformation. Every day had a character, a spirit, a vibration. Every number held meaning, every cycle was sacred. And the greatest of these was the Baktun. A Baktun is not a year, it is not a decade. It is not even a century. It is a unit of time spanning over 394 years. And the Maya tracked 13 of them, 13 back-tunes forming what they called the long count, a vast cosmic cycle measuring over 5,000 years, beginning in what we now call 3114 BCE and culminating in 2012. But this wasn't just a way of counting days, it was a way of understanding destiny. To the Maya, each Baktun held a frequency, a lesson, an evolutionary stage for human consciousness. And when the 13th Baktun ended, it didn't mean everything would collapse. It meant that the story of one era was complete, and the seed of a new one had been planted. But because we no longer know how to read these sacred rhythms, we mistook transition for destruction. You were never taught that time could be intelligent, that it could carry intention, that the unfolding of events might be part of a greater pattern designed not by chance but by a deeper order. The Maya knew. They knew that time didn't just move, it breathed. That every 260 days the Tzolk'in, the sacred calendar of human energy, completed a cycle. That every 365 days the Hab, the calendar of the Earth renewed itself, that the interaction between the two created not just calendars but codes, instructions for living in harmony with the universe. Every day you were born into, every energy you walked with, every dream you carried was encoded in that rhythm. You were born into a pulse, a pattern, a design, but you were taught to ignore it. Modern time is flat, empty, a list of hours and deadlines and appointments. But sacred time, the time of the Maya, is rich, living, multidimensional. It does not just tell you when something will happen. It tells you why. And most importantly, it tells you who you must become in order to align with what is coming. The calendar wasn't there to predict the end of the world. It was there to help you remember your place within it. So when 2012 arrived, what the calendar really said was simple. You've reached the edge of a great turning. What comes next depends on how deeply you remember who you are. But we weren't listening, not yet. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that time is just a number, that it moves forward in a straight line, ticking from past to present to future with no mystery, no depth, no soul, that every day is just another 24 hours on a lifeless clock. But that wasn't always the story. Before the noise, before the system, before you were taught what to believe, you felt it. As a child, you sensed the rhythms that no one else seemed to notice. The strange timing of certain events, the way the world seemed to whisper in patterns, the feeling that time itself was alive. But then they told you to stop listening. They taught you that intuition is foolish, that mystery is dangerous, that only what can be measured is real. And so you stopped asking questions. You stopped trusting the invisible. You traded the living pulse of sacred time for the cold machinery of calendars and deadlines. But what if that wasn't accidental? What if the very structure of modern life was built to make you forget? Because when you forget that time has meaning, you forget that your life does too. When time is reduced to nothing but hours and efficiency, you begin to live in survival mode, rushing, chasing, reacting. You stop feeling the seasons within you. You stop noticing the synchronicities, the alignments, the subtle nudges from the universe that once guided your path. You stop moving with time and start being pushed by it. This is not how the Maya saw time. This is not how any ancestral culture saw time. Time was sacred. It was a teacher, a mirror, a river you could swim in, not a treadmill you're forced to run on. But you were trained to forget that. School taught you to obey the bell, to follow the schedule, to value logic over wonder. Science told you that time is just a property of space, a variable in an equation, a measurement of decay. Religion told you that all meaning lies after time, in heaven, in eternity, not within it. And the result? A civilization that lives outside its own rhythm, a humanity that has lost the music of the cosmos, a world that forgot how to listen. But just because you forgot doesn't mean it's gone. The sacred clock is still turning. The rhythms are still there. And even now, something deep inside you remembers. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening. Because a part of you knows that the calendar didn't end. It was your connection to it that was severed. And once you remember that, everything begins to change. When the date approached, the world held its breath. December 21st, 2012, millions stared at the sky, waiting for something to fall, waiting for an explosion, a rupture, a cosmic punishment. And when the sky remained silent and the ground stayed still, they laughed. Nothing happened, they said. But something did happen, just not the way they expected. Because real change doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it arrives like a breath, invisible, quiet, but irreversible. The Maya never predicted fire or ruin. They didn't speak of tsunamis, earthquakes, or global collapse. What they pointed to was a threshold, a moment when the world's invisible architecture would begin to shift. A change not in matter but in meaning. A transformation not of the planet but of perception. A portal, not an apocalypse. Because the end of the 13th Baktun wasn't a prophecy of destruction, it was the completion of a great cycle of consciousness, a cosmic breath exhaled after more than 5,000 years. And in that exhale, the frequency of the earth began to rise, subtly, almost imperceptibly. But for those who were listening, Everything felt different. Time began to bend. Dreams became more vivid. People started waking up in waves, no longer satisfied with the narratives they had inherited. The structures of society, governments, institutions, belief systems began to show their cracks. What once felt solid started to feel hollow. What once seemed eternal started to crumble. And it wasn't chaos. It was cleansing. The old world didn't end in flames. It began to dissolve from the inside like a serpent shedding its skin. The Maya spoke of this not in terms of catastrophe but of evolution. They called it the return of the sacred feminine, the rise of inner sight, the rebirth of solar consciousness. A new sun, not in the sky but in the soul. And like all births, it began in darkness. That's why so many have felt lost since 2012. Because the world didn't collapse, it opened. And when something opens, it asks you to step through. But stepping through means letting go. Letting go of the old maps, the old beliefs, the old identities. The portal wasn't a spectacle, it was an invitation. And most people missed it. Not because it wasn't real, but because they were looking in the wrong direction. The real shift happened within. A reconfiguration of energy, a collective initiation. The doorway is still there, and the question is no longer what happened in 2012. The real question is, did you cross the threshold, or are you still waiting for a sign that already arrived? So many people thought that when 2012 came and went, they had been fooled, that the Mayan prophecy had failed, that nothing had changed. But deep inside, something had. And for many, the years that followed felt strangely hollow, unstable, disorienting, as if the world lost its center and no one could find the rhythm again. That sense of drifting. It wasn't failure, it was transition. The portal had opened, but there was no map for the new terrain, no guidebook for how to live after the cycle turned. The system stayed the same, but the frequency didn't. And that's why you felt it, that tension between the world's surface and your soul's depth, that strange gap between the life you're expected to live and the one you feel quietly calling you beneath it. You are not alone in this. You are not broken. You are waking up in a world that hasn't caught up with itself yet. Because this new era wasn't meant to look different. It was meant to feel different. And the truth is, it does. You've noticed the shift in small things, the restlessness, the way old ambitions no longer satisfy you, the way your body resists routines that once seemed normal, the sudden urge to be closer to nature, to silence, to truth. These are not symptoms of confusion. They are signals of emergence. The old template is no longer valid and your spirit knows it. That's why trying to live like you did before only deepens the disconnection. Because you are now walking in a frequency that demands alignment. And alignment is not comfort, it's honesty. It's the stripping away of what no longer resonates. The habits, the goals, the roles you've been playing just to survive. They don't fit anymore. Not because you've failed, but because you've outgrown them. This is why the post-2012 world has felt both chaotic and sacred at once. Like the ruins of something collapsing and the blueprint of something being born. That's exactly what it is. The in-between space, the liminal field, the cocoon. And the only way through it is to remember, not remember facts or dates or theories, but to remember the rhythm, the pulse, the sacred nature of time. Because once you do, everything starts to make sense again. The disorientation fades, the confusion dissolves, and the path becomes clear, not laid out in front of you, but rising from within you. Not built by logic, but by resonance. Not found in noise, but in silence. You don't need to be fixed. You need to re-sync with yourself, with the earth, with the new song of time that has already begun. The question is, are you ready to listen? You don't need to build pyramids to live in alignment with sacred time. You don't need to speak ancient languages or memorize esoteric codes. The wisdom of the Maya was never meant to be locked away in museums or textbooks. It was designed to live inside you. The calendar wasn't just a tool to track days. It was a mirror of consciousness, a spiritual compass to help you walk in rhythm with the universe. And even now, even after centuries of erasure and distortion, the path is still there, waiting. The Tzolk'in, the 260-day sacred calendar, continues to turn. Every day a new energy is born. Every day a different Nawal, a spiritual archetype, offers its guidance. Some days bring clarity, others bring chaos. Some are meant for planting, others for letting go. But none are random. And the deeper you listen, the more you begin to remember that time is not just passing, you are dancing with it. You can begin today. Before checking your phone, before opening your calendar, ask yourself, what energy lives in this day? There are resources that still track the Tzolk'in, still reveal the Nahwal of the moment. You might find that today is guided by Toj, the fire that burns away karma. Or maybe it's Kat, the net that gathers people and purposes together. Each one is a lens, a message, a frequency. And as you begin to walk with them, not just intellectually but energetically, you'll feel the shift. The disconnection will begin to dissolve because you'll no longer be measuring time with artificial numbers. You'll be syncing with the original rhythm. And you don't need to understand it all to begin. You just need presence, a small ritual, a candle lit at dawn, a whispered intention as the sun rises, a return to silence, a question asked with your hand over your heart. What does this day ask of me? The Maya aligned themselves not only through observation but through offering. The ritual of fire, the burning of copal, the rhythm of breath, the planting of corn not just as food but as prayer. These weren't superstitions. They were technologies of the soul, ways of tuning the self to the music of the cosmos. And most importantly, the path was collective. The calendar wasn't made to glorify kings or track prophets. It was created so communities could move together in harmony. Imagine what it means to live in a society where everyone wakes up aligned to the same frequency, not dictated by productivity but by spirit. That is what we lost. That is what we are slowly remembering. And it begins with one step, realigning your own time. Because the moment you do, something ancient unlocks. The confusion begins to clear, and the sacred rhythm once forgotten begins to sing through you again. You were never meant to live disconnected from time. You were never meant to chase it, fear it, waste it, or survive it. Time was never your enemy. It was your teacher, your ally, your rhythm. And the Maya never told you that it would end. What they told you was that one story would close and another would begin. That the breath of one era would exhale and a new one, yours, would begin to inhale. But if you keep living by the rules of a world that has already died, you will always feel lost. Because the world you were trained for no longer exists. The systems are still standing, yes, the schedules, the jobs, the noise, they still surround you. But the frequency beneath them has changed. The river has shifted course. And if you try to walk upstream, the current will drown you. This is why your intuition feels louder, why your dreams are clearer, why silence sometimes feels more honest than words. You are not imagining it, you are remembering. The future you've been waiting for is not in front of you, it's inside you. It's been waiting for you to stop following expired maps and start trusting the compass within. Because the moment you step into alignment with sacred time, not the artificial time of machines, but the pulsing time of soul, your life begins to flow again. And this is not philosophy. It is not myth. It is practice. When you rise with intention, when you walk with ritual, when you listen to the energy of each day, reality begins to respond. Synchronicities increase, resistance softens, clarity arrives, and you realize something radical. The calendar never ended because your journey is just beginning. You were not born into this era by accident. You chose to be here now, at the turning of the wheel, when the veil is thin and the portal remains open, and you carry something the ancient ones saw coming, something they designed the calendar to prepare you for. Not a prophecy to fear, but a frequency to embody. And if you've made it this far, it's because part of you already knows. You didn't miss the shift. You are the shift. You are the continuation. You are the breath between cycles. You are the echo of sacred time, finally learning how to speak its language again. So walk forward, not in fear, not in confusion, but in rhythm. Because the clock didn't stop in 2012. That's when it started. And the next chapter, it's written with your steps. Comment "I stepped through" if you're ready. Let's keep going. There's more on the other side.